You're very welcome to the latest episode of The Racing Room. It's me, Ronan Groom, back in the hot seat this week with the usuals, Anthony Kaminskis, Harry Stewart Moore, and Tony Calvin. Well, we've a lot to talk about on the podcast. We have 10 million fine for Unibet's parent company to talk about with Maureen Haggis versus Zach Purton. We have a mad story from the US involving FBI, NBA stars, and mafia. But first, we have to go back to a tweet yesterday. What were you thinking, Anthony Kaminskis? That tweet about chocolate biscuits, those gold digested chocolate biscuits.
I didn't even get a chance to bloody try them. Just
What
replied.
were they? They were like McVitie's gold biscuits, were they?
Yeah, the McVitie's Gold Bar is probably responsible for any weight gain I've had in the last few years, to be honest with you. It's absolutely off the charts.
Yeah,
And then I just walked past the biscuit aisle there in the supermarket the other day, and yeah, they had them coated on digestives, to which people said they're actually atrocious. But didn't get a chance to try them yet, so might partake later.
Yeah, well, it's quite controversial, wasn't it? All that.
I think it was trending,
probably a good thing, because you could have been choking on them yesterday evening, as the impressions on the other tweet to which we refer, and we'll get into now, went up and up and up and up. But just to give a bit of background, I'm sure everyone listening to this will have seen the interactions on X yesterday. But so we had a tweet from Ian Brothers, who has basically screen grabbed the account closure email that gets sent out to people when they get their account closed. And he has tweeted saying, "What heinous act has caused this to happen, you might ask? I had £20 anytime touchdown score on Johan Dotson at 11-2 and £20 on George Kittle at 2-1. AK were top price on both according to Oddschecker. What a joke, AK Bets at Tony Calvin." To which you replied, AK, "Afternoon, Ian, you did take the 11-2, but you were only after the general market moved 7-2, 4-1. You did take 2-1, but only after general market moved to 13-8, 7-4. Similar to previous bets. We do have plenty of smart guys here. Sadly for you, it's not organ grinders. It's organ grinders, not monkeys here." So, AK, I guess lots of interaction, lots of people tweeting back, having a go. How do you kind of reflect on this now, or what? How do you want to kind of explain it now?
Well, sorry, I had to use the kids' boxing gloves there as the prop. How do I reflect on it? From the top, I suppose, just to discuss the account in general, because the previous customer, the former customer, has happily shared his bet history. So it's an account we've had on the system for, I don't know, a year, 18 months. I'm not even sure, a year-ish maybe. Obviously selective, which is absolutely fine. Selective in low liquidity markets. Previous business on horse racing. There's been reference to Royal Ascot and stuff like that, which is correct. Bet one, I think, was just our off feed prices, which were bet quite hard. Few other bets quartered the first four bets in 17, 18 runner handicaps, that sort of thing. Typical tradie type bets, basically. Regarding the customer and what we'd feel from a profitability point of view, I'd imagine that customer is probably going to be roughly a break-even customer on those bets. Maybe a slight winning customer for us based on the bets that I've seen retrospectively. Wasn't actually in the office yesterday, but retrospectively seems to be that way. Very, very occasional bets when we're top price, which is absolutely fine. That's the profile of the account. Now, as we've explained before, or as I've explained before, that account, even if I think it's slightly positive, 1 or 2% positive, it's going to be negative overall with all the costs, right? So that's by the by. Inactive for a while. I think there was a couple of small bets he might have shared on the Ryder Cup, which I actually think were just, I don't know what the story was there. They're not in keeping with previous stake sizes. So you're talking previous stakes, 200 quid, 100 quid on horses. I think there was a couple of Ryder Cup bets where the bet might have been a quid Yankee or something like that. Just an immaterial bet on golf, essentially. Account is inactive, dormant, whatever you want to call it, for 6 weeks, 2 months, basically, since I think the last proper bet was the 1st of August, prior to yesterday. And then obviously the accounts popped up. 2 bets asking, I think he asked for more than what he was laid. I don't know the specifics. I have 60 quid in my head. Probably should have checked it prior to coming on here. On prices that had moved industry-wide that hadn't changed in that feed, essentially. Now, at one point, you get a lot of replies on stuff like this. When you're trying to explain decisions, and listen, my tone was probably not correct, so it definitely wasn't correct, but my tone when replying to that email, in my head, I'm replying to somebody who has industry experience. I'm not replying to a member of the public, essentially, which is probably something that I need to change and adapt myself going forward, and just reply to everyone in the same monotonous tone if I am going to reply at all. But we tend to defend our account closures, essentially. So I saw the tweet. I asked the lads what happened here. I was sent screenshots of the general market. Feed didn't update. Basically, one of the prices as good as twice as big as it should have been. Fine. Next bet was a slight mover as well. Again a price that hadn't updated. So the trader in question has basically laid some bets on the market, which is what we do, we're instructed to do, essentially. We don't tend to, unless there's something absolutely horrifically 33 should be 3, or an event not timed down correctly or something like that. So the customer's been laid bets. Then there's been a review of the business prior. So 10, 12 bets, I believe. And I think from my point of view, it's just, I think what irked me yesterday, and I shouldn't get irked by it, but I do get irked by it, is somebody with relative industry experience who...
So what is the industry experience? I'm lost by that.
Well, I again, don't know because I'm dug into the customer, but like plenty of people in the industry seem to know him. I don't know whether he works directly in the industry, but seems to have an interest in the industry and know various people in the industry. In my opinion, the replies were essentially, I didn't know those prices were way out of line, hadn't updated after injury news. Again, I don't follow NFL, so I believe there was some kind of injury news or something which basically changed one of the markets, and it didn't update. Now, we get a lot of people, going back to that, what irked me, I think it was, in my opinion, it was just playing dumb a little bit regarding the price. It was like they were totally off prices, and you can say you should lay off prices. My opinion would be we did. We're not a bookmaker that slow rolls with draws. Like, those bets are obviously no good objectively to anybody to lay, but we've laid them anyway. I think
Do you know how stale those lines were in terms of timing?
Yeah, I think they were hours late. It was just a market that hadn't updated on the site, essentially. One market.
Can you also explain what off feed means to people who may not be well versed in that?
Yeah, so regarding the horse racing, so your horse racing prices would be on the feed, essentially. So it'd be essentially you're paying for a feed. You can compose the feed however you like, similar to what on-course bookmakers do, essentially. You have a feed of prices, using your own opinion and price and information from elsewhere, essentially. But we take bigger races in horse racing off the feed. We do it for Premier League football. We bet really hard Premier League football, various big sports. That's essentially what the big prices tab is. It's off feed prices, bet exceptionally hard with basically no expected margin in them, as a shot window, essentially. So what I would say about feed pricing generally is, yesterday on our site, I don't know what the correct number was, but we probably had 200,000 selections. If I had to guess, probably more than that. I'd imagine there's a handful of prices that we would consider being not updated there or not being correct. And from my point of view, this customer in question has basically picked 2 of them off and done 2 of them. And we've laid the bets, we've paid the bets out. Absolutely fine. There's no slow rolling of withdrawals for bets like that. You see various posts getting very little traction on Twitter of, I've sent in my documents to X bookmaker and 3 months later I can't get my money out of them. That's not the way we operate. Yeah, so that's essentially the story. Like we get, our feeds are like, they're not grade A feeds, like they're not unbelievably premium feeds, but they're generally correct. And in instances where they're being picked off, as is your right to try and pick them off, Bets have been laid small, prices have been changed, and then the profile of that account is essentially a no margin account, probably a negative account with costs. And we're just not going to lay bets of that nature. What we will do, a good example is there was a customer, another off-feed market would have been the Irish presidential election, which you guys probably aren't too familiar with. There was a candidate called Maria Steen who was 66 to 1. A poll came out a couple of minutes before we got asked to bet. So you're literally seconds to react. So we've not seen this poll, obviously, a couple of minutes. Customer who, again, the very, very same profile as this guy, industry related, asked for 100 quid at 66 to 1. Now, the price has gone everywhere. We haven't reacted to it quick enough. You can say that's the fault of us. Totally understand that as well. But you're talking minutes when there's plenty of things to do. Customers asked for 100 quid at 66 to 1. So we've offered the customer 20 quid at 66 to 1. The rest at 33. 33 would have been still absolute standard industry price. And the customers ended up taking 100 quid at 33. I think he said, oh, the 66 was wrong anyway. Happy, thanks for the 100 quid. Within 2 hours, that candidate's like 5 to 1. So I just take a slight exception with the fact that I suppose we basically don't make bets, essentially. Like if that customer yesterday would have come to us and said, I actually really fancy this guy, it's generally 7 or 2. I get that you've put a stale price up there. Can I have 200 quid at 4 to 1?
I think his point is he didn't know it was a stale price, isn't it?
Yeah, that is his point. I don't buy that. Maybe I'm wrong.
I just think we need to be a bit careful because I've not seen anything, Tony, I don't know if you have, that suggests he is industry as such. I mean, I think if he's...
Yeah, well...
So, I mean, Ian, who's... I asked
Ian,
him...
sorry, yeah.
I actually asked him his name because I didn't think Ian Brothers was his actual name. He just literally come on to me now. So his name's Ian Broderick. So I'm sure you know that from... But he's happy to share that because he's
we can share that, obviously.
But he just told me on direct message. He was kind of like generally put out yesterday. He sent some things to me that I took exception to which he kind of like reined back on. But he just seems generally kind of like, I would say, put out and generally surprised that his account was shut for these because and he did reference some industry people when he said to me, he just said, if you want a character reference about how I bet, I'm old school. And he mentioned a high profile person, and I gather he is in those circles. So I think industry might be
related to industry.
Yeah, related to industry. But I think the point I will put, he asked me to ask loads of points, but I was going to ask him anyway. I mean, the reaction on X was when he posted all his bets and he gave permission for you to do that. I think anybody listening to that, looking at that, was saying that's a harsh closure. I mean, I get exactly what you're saying, and if you are taking 11 to 2 about something that's 7 to 2 and 130 across the board, most people would just think that's going to be flagged up to the bookmaker, and it might not be wise for the long-term health of the account to be doing that, albeit to a score. But a lot of people reading that, and I'll be in there as well, would think that's a harsh closure on the evidence we've had.
Yeah, and I think that's fair as well. Like when I saw the closure, I've obviously gone back through the bets myself yesterday evening, essentially. And I can see it from both sides, to be honest with you, as well. Like I can see why the account was closed, and I can see how you can make a case for leaving the account open. I suppose what we're trying to convey is it's very like what we try and convey is if that price is 9 to 2, 5 to 1, you're asking for 11 to 2 in isolation or as part of other stuff or whatever. Like that's absolutely fine. That happens every day of the week. I think my opinion would be these were essentially just prices that hadn't updated. And sure, you can blame us for that. That's absolutely fine. I think that's absolutely fine. But I think I don't know. I just think it's naive to think betting on such mispricings and thinking that your account's going to be laid indefinitely is naive. My tone in my replies is not good enough, in fairness.
I think, can I just give my penny's worth on that. I think one of the things I think punters really resent when having, and have for years when having their accounts closed down, is when they get emails from operators with the kind of implicit suggestion that they have done something wrong.
Yeah, no, I think
all operators do it. All operators do it. It's not sensible, because I think it really does poison the well.
Yeah.
And I just think this is another instance where, you know, would there not have been room for a more kind of direct approach where you just said, look, these two prices were stale. I don't know if it was a mistake or not, but if it carries on, we're going to assume it's a habit and close you down. Would that not have been a better response?
Yeah, I think, like, from the outside, that is a good response, and I think the reality is when you're dealing with it all day, every day.
Yeah,
it's slightly different. Like, it's not in isolation. We haven't even refused the bets on prices that are stale.
No.
We've taken bets, and just made a decision. And my communication, like I said, my communication is not good enough. I'm replying to somebody as if I'm talking to somebody in the professional gambling space, of which I'm from. And
if it's any comfort to Ian, can I just say he is just extremely rude in written correspondence. Like, oh, WhatsApp, he's just a rude guy. You know, it's just don't take it too personally.
No, I'm blunt, is what I am. I know what I want. I know what I think, and yeah. But,
when I was reading through all the stuff last night,
Ronan can attest to that as well.
Yeah, Ronan is a wry grin there. Yeah.
I just thought, thank God he's basically a teetotaler, because otherwise, if he had a drink, God knows what you'd been coming out with. It's it reminded you of Ben Keefe, who was another teetotaler. It was kind of like, God, if he had a
they're
drink,
the ones you have to watch.
Yeah, no, exactly.
I thought we'd get a tweet this morning saying my X account has been hacked by Greg Wallace.
Has anybody's X account ever been hacked? I don't think.
Mike Graham, yeah.
I don't think that's the thing. But no, like, I'm happy to stand over it. My tone's not good enough. I appreciate that. I'm trying to explain that there are ways, I suppose. Yeah. I think I'm replying to somebody, I think, who has industry experience, whether they directly.
Yeah, but I think that might be the issue. I think you thought they had industry experience, and I'm not necessarily sure you're right about that. But Ian can tell us.
Yeah, no, I don't think he works directly into the industry. I think he's connected to people in the industry, is what I'd say. You can correct that if that's incorrect. That's absolutely fine. So yeah, that's what I'd say. Like, I'd say essentially most of our prices, fee pricing, we laid the bets. It was a misprice, just the overall profile of the account. We people bump into misprices. Like, the same day yesterday, a horse at Shartin finished third and had almost the same name as a different horse. The fee provider settled the wrong horse. Some guy wins 1,200 quid, immediately withdraws it. We'll never see him again. Like, you see we see everything, essentially, and obviously I'm not conveying in my communications there well enough. I didn't have trending above Prince Andrew on the fucking on the wish list on a Monday morning, but it's a perverse thing as well. It's like, we would have previously paid Twitter. Some people aren't going to want to hear this, right? But we previously would have paid Twitter just to amplify posts and didn't think it worked. Yesterday, just to go through the impact of essentially my replies to that situation, it's essentially been a viral tweet, essentially. We had 5 accounts close on the back of that. 5 people said, don't want to bet with you, you can't speak to people there, blah, blah, blah. Or just didn't reply. I think two of the 5 said something like that. That's fine. One of them hadn't had a bet in 2 years. 2 of them had staked 50 quid between them. Like, I'm just trying to explain what the actual impact is, rather than the outrage on Twitter impact is, essentially. Now, the flip side of that is we had a record number of sign-ups for a Sunday because people now know there's another bookmaker. I'm not saying that's the correct way to go about acquiring.
Maybe they just know you offer stale prices. That might be.
Yeah, well, that's it. You probably looked at the big prices tab and can't believe that we're fucking lying. But no, like, that's the perverse way things work. I think it's not something that I'm particularly want to be known for. What I would essentially say is I just did some data analysis prior to this, essentially, right? In the month of October, 28 days, we've closed 30 accounts. I think it's something like 18, 20 of them, about 20 of them are for similar things to this, just absolute standout prices that haven't updated on a feeds where there's 200,000 prices a day. A couple of them are literally absolutely turnover tax related of guys wanting $5 grand on 1 to 33 shots. Like we can't service that business under turnover tax essentially. I'd imagine closing 30 accounts for trading reasons in 28 days is the lowest of any bookmaker in the whole industry, in my opinion. If there's somebody running an online bookmaker who's closed less than 30 customers in October, they're welcome to get in touch. As a percentage of active customers, it's unbelievably small for us. Like, we're not very heavy-handed on closing accounts. I think it can be misrepresented when certain demographics of people follow certain accounts on Twitter, and it might look like more accounts are being closed. We're barely closing any accounts. We don't make accounts 0.01 and say we don't close accounts, but nobody can actually have a bet as well. And I think that's probably the downside of my approach of literally, whether you like it or not, essentially telling the truth and explaining why we're going about things.
I think that explaining to customers is absolutely the right way to tell them when they're closing accounts. Yeah. I think the mistake you made was the assumption that he was trying to pull a fast one, because I just don't think he was. Yeah,
I think that's fair. I think that's absolutely fair. I think the decision probably is fair to still be the same, in my opinion. And there's no, in fairness, there's no real upside in even replying to stuff like that. If I don't reply to that tweet, he gets 10 likes off his mates, and that's essentially it.
Yeah, I was going to say that. I mean, you were in a no-win situation.
You are in a no-win. You are trying to explain as well, even as badly as that explanation.
Because people don't want to hear that. They just want to hear in isolation. You banned him for having a 20 quid on 11 to 2 shot, and it does look bad. But correct. I imagine all bookmakers and everyone who works for bookmakers were reading those threads and thinking, there, for the grace of God, go I, because it is a fact that account closures are far too heavy-handed in general. Just talking about my own experience, I have got one live account left. I did have two, but one got closed last year because they couldn't guarantee the safety of the account after 16 grand got wiped out of the account, and it took me a while to get it back and up and running. There was a constant attack on my account trying to get into the account, and so they just said, we can't guarantee the safety of your account. That's fine, but that's for a different. But the amount of closures that you get in the industry now, it is such that it is a industry-wide problem. That could have been any other bookmaker on any other day.
100%, but they wouldn't have explained, yeah.
Yeah, and the wider issue is, I mean, people are just saying, well, little wonder. People are just kind of like extrapolate from that and just say, is there any wonder why the black market's kind of like shining like that? But what I will say as well, I think kind of like tipsters have a duty of care here as well. I was sent something last week. I'll mention it by name because it's a matter of fact. I was sent a screenshot saying, is Andrew Mount tipping a horse called Uncle Don at Doncaster last week? He tipped it 11 to 1 with Bet365. The general price was 7s and 8s. That's fine. But Andrew must know, and I'm not singling out Andrew, but I'm giving it because it's a recent example. If you are directing people for a price that is free, at least free, and generally 4 points bigger than the next price, then there is going to be some comeuppance on that account if they continue to do that kind of thing. So I think you have to be mindful of, cherry picking prices. It's 4 points bigger than everywhere else, so have a maximum 5 point bet on it. That Andrew didn't do that, but I just think the whole kind of industry is overreactive in this there, but sometimes we don't help ourselves.
No, I do.
I mean, it does. Can I just say, it does go back to a point I made the other day, which is that this is an industry continually which just doesn't make space for break even or winning punters. there just isn't room for them, and that's something that the whole industry has failed. We laugh at total monopoly in exchanges and stuff, but you can see why, if you've had all your accounts closed down, you'd be thinking, well, it's all very well having a better product and bookmaking, but it's not much good for me if I can't get on with a bookmaker. So I think that is, it all really comes back to the fact that we still really don't talk about the elephant in the room as an industry, bookmaking, which is winning and break-even punters. What do you do with them? Because they are going to go to the black market apart from anything else.
Yeah. I think break-even punters, we definitely make a concerted effort. Even small losing customers, our expected losing customers, the actual and the expected are totally different, as we've said before. But expected to lose 2 customers, I genuinely think we're really fair. Like as a percentage.
I'm not singling you out at all. I'm
just trying to explain it. I'm trying to explain it from our point of view. Essentially, I give the account closure stats, like as a percentage of active database, it's absolutely minuscule. It's 0.2% or something like that. It's literally nothing. We tend to act very, very fairly. I think when we can debate whether you knew the lines were stale, we can discuss whether stale prices. It's on us. I do think it's on us, and that's why we lay the small bet essentially on both of them. Were they aware that the prices were so stale? Well, there was.
We
don't know, but there was X number of NFL matches last night and X number of anytime touchdown scorers, and customer found the 2 stale ones essentially, which is fine. I'm just happy with the way we operate just in general. The communication's poor there. Like another example would be IBAS for us. We've been going for 2 3/4 years online. We've been taken to IBAS 8 times. 8 times. It's like 1 every 4 months or something like that. And we've never lost an IBAS because I think we just behave fairly.
Rowan's looking like.
Shall we leave it there? Any final thoughts, lads? I think we teased that out quite well. Do you want to?
Yeah,
you can kick it on.
I would just reiterate that it's an industry-wide problem, and I can't see any solution to it. I mean, if you are a winning punter, you have to have. It will probably be a media link to account, or you're doing it as a kind of like a mark, which one firm in particular still do, believe it or not. So I think it's a big issue, and you don't have to be recording a profit. You just have to be taking the right prices, perhaps at the wrong time, or the wrong prices at the right time. It's like I said, this in isolation. It is as it is, but I mean, this is a industry-wide. Like I said, every single person who worked for a bookmaker, senior bookmaker, will be looking at that and saying that could have been us today.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that the customer in general. I think I'm right in saying this. You again can correct this if not. As you've said, Tony can't place bets anywhere else. Hasn't been able to place bets. Is it because of stuff like this elsewhere? Is it other reasons? I don't know, but we'll do our absolute best. I think the viral message on Twitter is closed down for winning 220 quid. The numbers are immaterial. We were at Galway yesterday and laid £1,000 on Inter to win the Champions League at 28s, and there's no margin in that. It's not. Amounts are irrelevant, absolutely irrelevant. It could be 50p, constant 50p's on stale prices. Unfortunately, it's going to be the same. It's going to be the same, and it is the same industry-wide. I think it's also incorrect just to say that all winning gamblers are being welcomed with open arms on the black market like it is. Does nobody?
No. I'm not. They're not. But they'll have the same problems. But they'll go there next. Is all I'm saying. They'll go and have the same problems on the black market.
Yeah.
At least they can get. You can get. It's quite easy to get on with someone who has no intention of paying you.
Yeah. I think it's. I think just overall to sum up, communication poor. Could have been more. Definitely should have been more polite in replying to some of the things that I thought were wrong about it, essentially. But happy to discuss it further at any stage and break bread with the person in question anytime.
Very good, very good. Right, we do have a few We do have an actual podcast to do that was planned before all this happened, so we'll kick on with that now. Tony, do you want to take us through a quick fire review of the kind of racing scene over the weekend, and then we'll get stuck into some meaty topics?
Yeah. Start with the racing view. Cheltenham was back Friday and Saturday. They had a record crowd of 21,113 on Saturday. That's the highest attendance in the history of the October meeting. So all good news there for Cheltenham. Aidan O'Brien notched up 3 more Group 1 wins with Hawk Mountain on Saturday. He had the 1, 2, 3 and a 5-runner futurity. And he followed that up with Puerto Rico and Pierre Bernard and Songclu. So he's on his way to beat his yearly best Group 1 tally of 28. I think he might be on 25 or 24, 25 now, 25. I shouldn't have put this in really. It sounds like we're picking on him. But there was another blow for the big spending ammo team as their 2.5 million purchased Alpanara, 2-year-old, only finished 7th of 9 at Newbury. So that's another worry for those. There was another Melbourne Cup scratch. Racing Victoria Stewards took out another horse for the Melbourne Cup. So sounds like that's going to be a walkover. And there was a bizarre story from the US. We're going to go into this with greater detail, but the opening topic means we had to scale back on a few topics. The bizarre story from the US about a possession of an electrical device leading to a 10-year ban in the US for a jockey. Very James Bondy. So that was the action on the track. I mean, obviously we had Aintree and stuff yesterday, but it wasn't really top class stuff. But we have got a question on Hitman, who won at Aintree yesterday, that had a good side issue attached to it. And there was some controversy at Cheltenham. There was a 10-day ban for the £7 claimer Harry Atkins for his ride on Dan Skelton's Unexpected Party on Friday. The horse has been a Cheltenham Festival project in the last 2 years. He won the Grand Annual in 2024 and second in 2025. It sounds like the trainer was happy with the ride given. Well, the jockey rode to instructions, but the jockey got a 10-day ban. So I was just wondering, in these circumstances, do we think the trainer should be the recipient of the punishment too, and not just the jockey? Because a £7 claimer would have been riding to instructions. What do we think? Anybody got any thoughts on that?
I mean, I think that what's odd in these cases is that they don't ever deal with the question of motive when they say that the jockey hasn't been seen to make enough of an effort. Now, it will be very difficult, I suppose, in many ways, to question motive. But the problem is that there's a relatively innocent explanation for it, a more serious explanation for it, and a very sinister explanation for not riding a horse. I'm sure in this instance it wasn't anything sinister, but you've got three reasons: jockey failure, incompetence, negligence on the day. 2, they've been told to give it an easy go for whatever reason, handicapping reason, for example. 3, the horse is being stopped. And those 3 do not get explored in the past of these decisions. So it does seem odd in circumstances where the jockey, we don't know exactly what the trainer said at the steward's inquiry, but there seems to be an agreement on what the instructions were, which was to keep the horse at the back, let it enjoy its jumping, I think, and go ride a race from there. Which I can't tell you how many times I've heard the phrase "ride a race from there" as instruction. It is why has the jockey not done that? You know, why has he not been seen to give sufficient effort to get the horse at the best possible placing? That does seem a strange one in circumstances where they have ridden to instructions and yet found not to have done so. Is it just that the jockey completely mistimed, misread the situation, misread the race? I think that it just leaves a question, and I don't mean just this race, by the way. I think this happens relatively often.
Yeah,
where you have the jockey and the trainer agreeing what the instructions were, and yet a decision that the jockey has not made sufficient effort. I think if you were I think sometimes the way to look at a lot of things that happen in horse racing is if this was the first time you were watching horse racing, you'd watch that race, you'd look at the steward's inquiry, and you go, "What is that? It that what? Well, why hasn't he written out a proper finish here?" And I just think that it's one of the very strange sort of elements of the way that we deal with stewards' inquiries. There are certain things that we just consider perfectly normal, rather like, horses getting their first handicap mark, having gone off at 100 to 1, 200 to 1, 300 to 1, and then starting at evens in their fourth race. These are just things that we just seem to accept as perfectly normal in horse racing. So in some ways, nothing to see here, but it is a bit odd.
Yeah. Elsewhere off the track, I just read in the Racing Post this morning, British Racing Unites as 363 signed an open letter urging the Chancellor to abandon the betting tax hike. I'm not sure how that's going to go down. I think that was the main topic on the news yesterday. I was looking that I think the supermarkets are going down a similar path with much punchier numbers and much punchier, obviously, employment kind of like figures how many people they employ in the industry. So you can see the Chancellor's getting it from every single angle. So hopefully racing might get something. But
if she cried at the last budget, Jesus, you're going to be swimming out of this one, I'd say.
Yeah. And there was the ITV interview with Cheltenham CEO Guy Lavender on Saturday, which suggests that they were flying more than a kite, perhaps in the Racing Post last Monday. Reading through the lines, it sounds like they're pretty much set on a Saturday, and obviously that got a lot of reaction. And I was gonna reference someone's tweet about Mr. Lavender, but I won't do that because it's a bit unfair. But it sounds like Cheltenham on Saturday really is a possibility. So whether or not that comes to fruition, I don't know. But doesn't sound a popular move at the moment. But finances.
Wait, so what you're saying, Tony, is someone's trying to change something in racing and it's not gone down very well. I'm amazed to hear that.
Yeah, it's but yeah, you can see why the objections there. They're numerous.
Yeah, of course.
Up against other the big one that really came out. They just said, "Have you ever tried getting on a train on a Saturday?" Now, as someone who has quite regularly, I mean, it's they tend to put on less carriages on a Saturday, etc., etc. So actually, the logistics of getting to Cheltenham on a Saturday at the festival with 66,000 capped people might be an issue, but then they'll turn around and say, well, actually on Saturday we had a record crowd of 20,000+. So the demand for Saturday is there. But that's the racing review. It's not very exhaustive action on the track, but there was a bit of a furore yesterday that we had to chop and change some areas. But yeah, so that's the racing review.
Thanks, Long. We'll kick on with topics, gents, and start with the 10 million fine for Unibet's parent company, Platinum Gambling. So I'll just give you a bit of background on this, lads. So a 10 million penalty has been issued to Unibet's parent company, Platinum Gaming Limited, due to failures to enforce safer gambling and anti-money laundering measures. The company, which also operates Bingo.com, was also issued with a warning by the Gambling Commission and must undergo a third-party audit. It is their second penalty for the same breaches, having had to pay 2.9 million in 2023. So in the Gambling Commission's investigation, its system failed to identify one customer at a risk of harm despite losing £5,000 within 24 hours of registering. The customer went on to lose £16,000 within 3 months. Another customer had their monthly loss limit hit their monthly loss limit 6 times, losing more than £31,000, but the operator did not interact, while the system also failed to flag in an at-risk customer who had £2,500 lost £2,500 within 16 minutes of signing up. Some customers who had their accounts closed due to anti-money laundering breaches or terrorist funding or
you said Anthony then.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
I think
the brain. Some customers who had the accounts closed to anti-money laundering breaches or terrorist funding are also able to rejoin and gamble. Additionally, customer reviews missed key information relating to money laundering, such as high levels of transactions. So yeah, this is a pretty hefty one. I'd suggest, Harry, what did you what did you think of this when you read it? Is this kind of a how would you say kind of something more sinister on their part, or incoherent, or incompetent even on what their measures are?
I mean, look, the failures on this one don't look great to me, and sometimes, we've been critical of that, and subject to a point I'm going to come on to about who this actually helps publishing it. I think in the climate that we now exist in, these are relatively indefensible breaches on the face of it. The 4 bullet points at the top of the decision, which you've read out, Ronan, are pretty bad. I think people have been slightly quick to focus on the weakest one of these, which is arguably the 4th one, not interacting with the customer during a 23-day period in which they staked that 73,000 and lost 4,100. And people make the perfectly reasonable point that 73,000 is likely to be a huge amount of churn, and that 4,100 isn't a big loss on 73,000. But that's it. That the breach is the not interacting. It's not taking losses of 4,100 in a 23-day period, or indeed bets with total stakes of 73,000. It's the breach is failing to interact in the face of those. Now, there might be, until we know. And this is the real point. I think Anthony will make it after me. Until we really get an idea of how this works, it doesn't really educate operators enough. I spend a considerable amount of time trying to help new operators and existing operators coming up with various policies and that sort of thing. And we have to look at these and take them into account and try and extrapolate from them what those policies, how they should affect those policies. These need to be case studies, in my view. We need to start having, this is what happened. This is what they asked for. This was when they asked for it. They then took these bets. We decided that wasn't good enough. Then they took these bets. Then they did this check. That was too late. It's too difficult to learn from these. And yet the Gambling Commission will always say, you need to be looking at these documents and taking them into account. So while I have sympathy with the Commission for £10 million is a huge fine, but it's not the biggest. I think William Hill got 20 million quid a couple of years ago. Quite no reason to think that this isn't a reasonable fine. But in terms of learning, it would be lovely for operators and those who advise operators to understand exactly what's gone on here, so that we can not make the same mistakes, basically.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's hard to learn from reading, because it's so nuanced. I always think it's so nuanced. Like, the one thing we don't want to get ever is a fine. Like, that's it's pretty much priority number one over everything. It's like,
I think you need to delete your Twitter account, is my advice.
But no, it's genuinely not like, I don't think there's any bookmaker. There's definitely not any independent bookmakers I wouldn't have thought that want to exacerbate any kind of problem gambling issue, to be honest with you. I just don't believe that. And yeah, like you say, it's hard to learn because of the nuance. Like, if that, Harry is right, just that the one that stands out a little bit is the one at the bottom. And I suppose if the customer's bet 69,000 and won 69,000 and is break even, and break even from a trading point of view anyway, before costs, and then loses $4,000 over a couple of bets, it's like, I have just so many questions just on the back of it. You just want to learn more, essentially, and what happened and what's not acceptable. Like, from our point of view, there's thresholds where the targets around the amount of interactions you have with your active database. I can't, so I'm not a compliance person, but I have the number in and around 0.4, 0.6% of active customers or something like that. And I think we did an analysis on our interactions and we're 2.2%. So we're like, you are going above and beyond to be as non-intrusive as possible, but have interactions with people as well. Because obviously, for the vast majority of the time, you're essentially just getting in. You are just essentially getting in people's way with friction, and they want to say, just, I'm fine. And it's up to us to spot. any instances where that isn't the case. But we put all those barriers, for want of a better word, in place just so you're hitting those interaction thresholds, and meaningful interactions as well is probably the key missing word before interaction. Rather than it being a box ticking exercise, you do actually want to, if somebody has opinions in mind,
that's a very good point.
You want to stop it essentially. You don't want it to be box ticking. You want it to be effective, whilst not obviously having a detrimental impact on the customer base. That not wanting the interaction is probably the wrong way to phrase it, but just see it as an inconvenience essentially.
Yeah, it is difficult.
I think
as these things,
I think as these things go, I mean, the fines seem ludicrous to me. But as these things go, reading the report, as limited as it is, it sounds like this was quite a bad case, and they were dealt with pretty severely. But yeah, I mean, the one about hitting your loss limit kind of like 6 times and not even getting a kind of like any correspondence on that seems particularly poor, doesn't it? I appreciate we don't know the people involved and how rich they were, and the proportion of losses to how much they earn and how much they have in the bank. But yeah, this seems like one of the more justifiable big fines to me.
Yeah, I mean, there's a suggestion in the anti-money laundering failures that it was relatively endemic within Platinum, because it seems that the policies were just either wrong or not followed. There's not much excuse really for setting a policy and then not following it. Whichever. You can complain about lack of clarity from the commission as to what you should do, but if you're going to come up with a policy and then not follow it, then you are asking for trouble.
Yeah, I agree.
We'll move it on to Maureen Haggis versus Zach Purton, which story that kind of rumbled away last week and began at Kempton when Maureen Haggis was asked about a couple of runners down in Australia last weekend. So in particular, Lake Forest, who ran in a Group 1 there, I think it was the King Charles Stakes or something like that, and ran 12th to 12th. And straight away, she was pointed to the right, or pointed her finger at the jockey, Zach Purton, who rode Lake Forest. I'll just read you out quickly one of the quotes here. Lake Forest never had a race. It was the worst ride I've ever seen in my entire life. I was appalled, absolutely appalled. I don't know Zach Purton at all, but it was dreadful and so disappointing. Everyone knows you have to tell him he's got to go and do it, and he was told it, but he just sat there. I was horrified. I think in the next sentence, she also mentioned to call him a sissy of some sort, which was very interesting way to put it. But Zach Purton had a reply then later. I think he was on a racing.com podcast of some sort, and said, I didn't speak to her after the race, her being Maureen Haggis. Her or William weren't down there. Obviously, they watched it from up there. She's got her opinion, which she's entitled to. I thank her for her advice, but I haven't had time to watch the replay yet because I've been too busy watching replays of myself winning the $20 million Everest. So Zach was having a bit of fun with it thereafter. Tony, bring you in here first, because you were keen just the way this has played out with regards to obviously William Haggis's comments, which we talked about last week as well, and how the kind of media response to this and has gone kind of in 2 different ways. Yeah,
my first thoughts are that Maureen Haggis was on the same media training course as Anthony, but yeah, I mean, this was still rumbling on yesterday. Maureen Haggis came out and I think tripled down actually, because she did an interview with Luke Harvey on At the Races, Sky Sports Racing even, and obviously she came out yesterday and said she in hindsight she should have put Kieran Fallon on the horse. Now it's extraordinary, how this has rumbled on for 5 or 6 days, and obviously, in my opinion, William Haggis' comments on Oisin Murphy on Luck on Sunday, that would have been 8 days ago, wasn't even covered in the Racing Post. Now, there could have been legal reasons for that. There could have been more obvious reasons, i.e. they've got an ongoing relationship with both trainer and jockey and they didn't want to, drag them down. Obviously, it's quite easy to slag off a jockey that you're never going to use again, and he's on the other side of the world. So yeah, I just thought it was very, very stark, the difference between far more serious comments by William, the more kind of like light-hearted, back and forth with Zach Purton on the ride on Lake Forest. So yeah, it's just an interesting one, isn't it? And like I said, there was that Dragon's Den suggestion last week, wasn't there, about it's York in February. People can turn up and do a Dragon's Den suggestion for what racing can do a bit better. And I thought a goggle box with trainers and their wives, or trainers and their husbands, sit in front and put the worst rides available to them and watch them comment on it would be quite an interesting one. But yeah, it's like you said, it's all to do with relationships and keeping relationships. It's not, the editorial policy is dictated by their worth to you going forward rather than the actual story.
Yeah, it's I think it's forthright opinions are probably good. Unsurprisingly, that's what I think. My initial reaction was probably more so Zach Purton, to be honest with you. Like I think if you have a horse that's worth X amount of money, running for X amount of prize money, traveling across the world, all that effort. And I think if you think basic riding instructions haven't been followed, I can only imagine how annoying that is. That must be absolutely infuriating, given the levels of money involved and how important that is. Like you almost don't mind getting beat, but if you think you're just being ignored, horse has to be ridden this way, it has to be ridden this way. And then if that's essentially ignored, that must be absolutely infuriating. And I thought it was probably my initial comments when I saw this was going to be, I thought it was quite unprofessional of Zach Purton to respond as he did, but we're gonna retract that given the past 24 hours.
I think the final point on this is, if Kieran Fallon had ridden the horse as Zach Purton did, it would have been kept in-house and there wouldn't have been any public criticism. But to be fair, Maureen Haggas did do a very, very good interview with Luke Harvey on Sky Sports Racing. She kind of like took the piss out of herself and just said they had a 4-timer on the card, and Maureen said, well, actually 3 of the prizes are alcohol related, so I'm off for a drink. So yeah, so it's, like I said, there's a bit of humour in there as well, but it's just the stark difference between the way the two stories were covered or not covered, as it may be.
Indeed, we'll move it on, gents. More industry kind of related story with foal crop sizes. So this news came out last week. So the number of live foals registered in Britain and Ireland has fallen by 9.5% this year to 11,374, making the sharpest year-on-year decline in 15 years. This continues a long-term downward trend, with the foal crop shrinking by about 33% since 2006, when 17,527 were recorded. Ireland saw a 12% drop and Britain a 5% decline this year, reflecting ongoing challenges for the breeding industry after previous crises and a decade of slow recovery. So this projected decline of the British foal crop was addressed in stark terms by the Thoroughbred Breeders Association chairman Philip Newton during his address. There he stated, I'm disappointed to say that parts of the industry are in denial about the serious problems the breeding industry is facing and how that will play out in the overall racing industry. And he also added that the foal crop is now under severe pressure. Tony, do you want to have first dibs at this? What's happening here? It's just a kind of continuance of the team that we've discussed on the pod many times before.
Yeah, there's not much more to say, really. I mean, the guy just said it. I mean, if you have got a declining foal population and you've got a static, overly heavy fixture list, I mean, it's the field size is just going to be decimated in years to come. I mean, you can't just magic up horses. I mean, you might be able to buy them from France or Ireland, where I'm not sure how the foal crop sizes over there are, but something's got to give. And like I said, Lord Allen might come in and just say, look, these are the facts. We're going to have to cut the fixture list, but racecourses aren't going to budge. They'll just say, well, no, take them from them, not us. So it's a massive, massive issue. And I think he's right. I think people are in denial, but whether or not they act upon it, history would suggest not.
Does anyone else want to come in there, or we can kick it on to this juicy story over in the US?
Nothing from me on that one, Ronan.
5 day Cheltenham. 5 day no. Go on.
6 day Ascot. Yeah, let's do this story about the NBA stars and FBI crackdown on illegal gambling over in America. So, an NBA player and coach are among dozens of people arrested as part of a sweeping FBI investigation into illegal sports betting and allegedly rigged mafia-linked poker games. Miami Heat player Terry Rozier and Portland Trail Blazers head coach Chauncey Billups were named by federal prosecutors in two separate indictments on Thursday. Both men denied the allegations. So Rozier, a 31-year-old, is among 6 people arrested over alleged betting irregularities. They include NBA players accused of faking injuries to influence gambling markets. Billups, who's a Hall of Fame player turned coach, is one of 31 people charged in a separate illegal poker game case involving retired players and the mafia. That case, which prosecutors said involved 4 of the 5 major crime families in New York, uncovered an alleged scheme to lure victims into playing rigged poker games alongside high-profile sports stars before stealing millions of dollars. They did so using technology including special contact lenses and glasses that could read pre-marked cards on
That's
an
what Harry's
X-ray
got
table.
on. That's what Harry's got on.
Yeah, that's what that glitch
He's just
is
been playing poker.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So the NBA have said in a statement that both Rozier and Billups were placed on immediate leave as it reviews the federal indictments. So, Harry, take us away here from the legal perspective. Is this going to be a film in about 3 or 4 years' time when it all comes out?
I mean, I think it almost sounds like it's been based on a film, doesn't it? It's listen, there's not much to add, Ronan. We don't know much. They've been arrested. The two, lots of people appear to be arrested. Every Italian family that is associated with the crime seems to be named in this investigation, and it is like something out of a movie. That they had X-ray card tables. There has been all sorts of different crimes associated with the underlying offence, including it looks like they beat someone up in order to get the equipment to do the cheating with. It's astonishing. I mean, you've long heard that gambling was the preserver of the mafia in certain states in America, but I slightly wonder why you need the mafia to run a poker game nowadays. Anyway, even an illegal one. I mean, perhaps it's more about them finding out that you've done it without their knowledge than anything else. But it is astonishing. We don't know really anything more than has been reported on. There are 2 elements to it. One is it's not match fixing. It's that kind of the it's always the biggest integrity threat are things like yellow cards and being substituted and that kind of thing, because they're relatively easy for players to control. And it looks like this was one that the NBA player was substituted at a certain point or taken off at a certain point.
Said he was injured or something.
Yeah, exactly. And lots of bets placed on that, quite significant bets. I mean, I was trying to think whether this remotely linked to the kind of lack of the lightening of the regulations in America, but I don't think it is. I don't think the mafia were too worried about what they were and weren't allowed to do under their regulations previously. So astonishing stuff.
It's kind of like you mentioned 4 out of 5 crime families. I wonder who the crime family is that just aren't into punting.
The Sopranos.
Yeah. I was gonna say, but there is all these things. They always shine a light on the betting industry, but I think without the betting industry, it's hard to know what comes first, the chicken or the egg, I suppose. But without the betting industry, you probably don't hear about a lot of this stuff as well, and maybe it'd be going on anyway. And previously, as a case, that the Netflix drama of it is pretty garbage. But Tim Donaghy, do you remember Tim Donaghy, the NBA referee? Did you know that story?
I don't remember that. No.
That's a cracker. Well, the story is that the Netflix thing isn't that good. I think there's a book on it that's pretty good. He was basically point shaving and giving was basically betting for some kind of, he was advising the crime syndicate on what to bet on games they refereed. And basically a group of gamblers, pro gamblers that bet basketball, spotted the movements offshore, and they knew what was happening by working out that he was the referee when all these line moves happened and stuff like that. So it's a fascinating one if anyone hasn't heard that story. But I think this is probably where bookmakers flag up people that are doing this stuff, I suppose. But it's a little bit chicken and egg.
I think the other thing to bear in mind here is one of the lawyers, I think brilliantly named Jimmy Trusty or something, from the reports, has said that his client has already been told that he had done nothing wrong by it. And I think the other thing we need to bear in mind is that this FBI director who has I can't remember his name. Something Patel. Yeah. Is not your average FBI director. He is a pretty controversial character, and he's had his. I think he's quite keen to get his face all over the press in connection with this. So those are just two things to bear in mind, that we don't yet know that any of this has actually happened.
The guy Joseph Nocella, you're referring to there, Harry.
Which one? No, the new director, the guy that they put in, who's been shouting at people in select committees recently.
It is Patel, isn't it?
It's something Patel. I'm going to name that a comedian, if I'm not careful, who is not. It's not him.
Sorry.
No, I can't remember his first name.
I was listening to another podcast on this, just a general sports podcast, which will just show you the story is quite interesting to outside the betting terms even as well. But they were kind of laughing at the FBI guy who came out with the statement because he was like main character syndrome, wanted to kind of get his line out there. His line at the end was, "Your winning streak has ended. Your luck has run out. Violating the law is a losing proposition, and you can bet on that." He just said this like in front of a whole room, as if like mic drop moment to the whole room, and it's funny.
Don't get me started on the way that the American justice system allows people to comment. People involved in investigations to comment. All those lawyers that come out of trials and start giving interviews immediately while they're in the middle of cross-examination. Just astonishing. But anyway.
Indeed. We'll see how it plays out. Our fifth topic, AK, do you want to come in here? This is on VBet, which so VBet no longer offer any horse racing events as of last week. Essentially, I guess they're essentially turning off racing on their site. So you were posting about this earlier in the week, AK, and have suggested it might be on the cards. I wonder, is this sooner rather than later? I don't have much knowledge of the firm. I don't know if they're huge or a big outfit, but yeah. What do you think?
Again, I don't know much about them, to be honest with you. I did see them on. There's been people confusing them with Virgin Bet, which I think might still be going. But it's not them. It's a company called VBet. It's like it's a garish pink logo. I think I saw reference to them being Armenian based. And yeah, they were on Oddschecker for a certain period of time. They don't seem to be there now. And yeah, just a few people. I wouldn't have had a VBet account personally. No, just wouldn't have been for me. But a few people I know got the email at the same time, just saying that they've removed all horse racing from the website as of that day. Basically, they emailed, I think, on the 23rd of October from memory, maybe the Thursday, and just said that this is the last day that we'll be offering horse racing on the site. Essentially, just probably cost related, and with potentially more cost to come. It's the rolling back of things that don't make financial sense, and horse racing is probably right on the top of that chopping block for online and retail, as previously discussed.
Indeed. We'll move it on. That's obviously a bit tight for time. One more topic just to briefly mention. This is another lawsuit over in the United States. So I might bring Harry in very briefly just to give us the legal kind of perspective here. But former horse racing gambler Ryan Dickey has filed a class action lawsuit under the RICO Act against major racing and wagering entities, including Churchill Downs, Naira, and the Stronach Group, alleging they conspired with computer-assisted wagering players to manipulate betting pools. The lawsuit claims that these insider betting groups used advantaged algorithms and AI to gain unfair advantages, rig odds, and divert profits away from regular bettors. Dickey argues that the manipulation has turned lawful pari mutuel wagering into illegal gambling operations, misleading the public about true odds and payouts. This suit seeks monetary compensation and a jury trial, alleging 4 courts of racketeering, illegal gaming, and conspiracy. So, Harry, I guess not much to add on it here now, but could you maybe explain in layman's terms what this sort of would mean over here, or something? Maybe give a
So, I mean,
here, I guess.
As you say, it's an American thing, and it works differently. We have something similar to class actions here, which is relatively new, called group litigation. Basically, so an obvious example would be like the emissions litigation that's going on over here, and lots, those sort of claims where people sort of sign up to become a claimant in what ideally for the claimants becomes a sort of glorified compensation scheme if things go well. In America, I think it's slightly different. I've noticed there is a law firm that seems to have taken this by the steering wheel and is advertising really for claimants who say, basically, have you had a bet into any of these pools or with any of these operators? And it looks like they then have to go to court and get it approved, which I think is slightly different here. So there are hurdles to creating a class action here. But the interesting thing is not so much the procedural element of signing up lots of clients, lots of potential claimants, as to whether they can actually prove any of this stuff, because it's racketeering is a very serious criminal offense in America, and a very, very serious allegation. We'll see how this one plays out.
We will. Question time, lads. We've a good few to get through, so we'll zoom through each of them. So Charles Burns of Celtics first up. Did you take much on the Irish election, AK?
Did we take much? Probably for the size of the market, probably average enough, I'd say. We just it was again another acquisition too, like we said. The 2 big losers didn't make it to the final round, so well traded. And it was a small win, and there was the two. I can't remember if Jim Gavin was a loser in the book, but then he withdrew, and I think he might have been. And then we had 2 winners in the book, but small money essentially. I think we won 1,500 quid, something like that. So it was small, but I think we laid the winner at 7s a couple of times, but that was more than made up by other bets elsewhere. I think Heather Humphreys was well bet early on, so it was okay. It's a good result for small money.
Very good. Another one for you, AK, from Neil Monroe. Would AK Bets be willing to explain how media rights work for racing works? There's a lot of coverage around, as there is a lot of coverage around this. Not exact figures, but as an example, is he paying the same now alone as opposed to when white labeling on Star? Do they show flex for smaller operators?
No, regarding flex, regarding white label, it was the exact same. So the way, I think I can probably say this because it's in the public domain from the Goodwin chap, 3% plus VAT is fairly standard. So that's 20%. So it's usually 3.6% of turnover. For horse racing is a fairly standard deal. Might change depending on product and jurisdiction. But yeah, that's I think that's fairly standard, and it seems to be common knowledge after that interview anyway. And from memory, that is made up of around 2.25% data and 0.75% streaming. So you can reduce it by taking streaming off your site. But that obviously will put you at a competitive disadvantage in the current climate. It's 3.6% of turnover, in addition to 10% of winnings going to levy, 15% of profit going to general betting duty, GBD, as well as various other costs on the site. Just really, really, really expensive. There's no other sport that comes near it for the amount it costs to host the content.
Yeah. Question for you, Tony, from David Brown. Um, enjoy Dallin. An 11-year-old with patchy form gets a £7 hike for his fake it and win, while Celtic Dino, progressive and fresh off a Welsh champion hurdle, gets just £4. Is the handicapper grading on vibes? Where's the logic, let alone the incentive for keeping all the horses in training?
Well, you can always cherry pick examples like this. The bottom line is, I think the handicapper has erred on the side of leniency with older horses in general. Obviously, in this case, David doesn't think that's the case, but it's very hard to make sweeping statements about specifics.
Good Liberal 2016. Why don't punters just bet to 100% book on Betfair and pay 2% commission? In brackets, you can choose this commission level on Betfair rather than over rounds of 120% to 150% with bookmakers. You can have great enjoyment betting £100 turnover and only lose £2, or £1,000 and only lose £20. Who wants to take that, AK?
Me, please. Why don't people do it? Just because there's barely any markets on there. There's not much liquidity. Place markets for horse racing are non-existent. So you basically have to bet win only. 2% commission is correct if you are losing punter or small winning punter. If you're winning money of any level, you pay 40%. Premium charge. I think that can go up to 60%, I think. But my level was 40%. So it made having a bet with them literally just don't bet with them essentially, or when I was betting myself. Yeah, that's it essentially. People want to bet. It's just a failure to understand what the general public wants, I think. And the general public wants to bet each way. They want various markets, they want to do multiples, they want to place bets and be matched straight away. They don't want to be chasing a price and forcing a price down in a low liquid market, and that's why I think Betfair always struggle to, for want of a better phrase, replenish the fish, because it's as with exchanges and totes, as you can see from the story above, it's where sharks do roam in the betting water, and Betfair's biggest issue for years, and still obviously is they couldn't replenish price insensitive customers quick enough to feed all the fish that were swimming in the pool, essentially. So whilst you might be averse to the success of bookmakers and the fixed odds betting industry, I think swimming in those waters will be you might get consumed a lot quicker.
So another question from the same account. How much turnover in UK betting shops is in respect of horse racing compared to FOBTs? If majority of turnover is FOBTs, why do bookmakers pay for horse racing media rights to betting shops? Isn't it now only relevant to pay media rights re mobile phone / online betting? Harry, do you want to have a go with that one?
Yes, I don't know the percentage of property to sports betting, for example. I'm not sure that is widely known. The media rights was when last time I dealt with a media rights agreement, which was not particularly recently. They are generally very tied to the number of licensed LBOs, licensed betting offices, betting shops, as we call them. Because those were traditionally always where people went to watch racing. You go into betting shops, and that's where you place your bet. So there was an interest in keeping them in betting shops. It's also, by the way, I think, rumor at least, is that that's the Racing Post's biggest source of income, is putting their papers up in betting shops. So a lot of things are still tied to the existence of LBOs, and I think that must still be the case, judging by the general commentary on this, which is that if this tax comes in, LBOs will close. Media rights payments will therefore fall, which will hurt horse racing. So it sounds to me like while I'm sure it is the case that it is now much more closely tied to people streaming media rights, racing footage, that I still think that the number of licensed betting shops showing racing is still very important for the for the income of horse racing.
It definitely is. The question says, if the majority of turnover is FOB tees, why do bookmakers pay for horse racing media rights? I'd imagine turnover-wise, even going back to the question above around betting exchanges, there are casino games where you can play with 1.6% or 98.4% RTPs, which is, when you're talking about enjoyment of £1,000 and lose 20, it's even lose less than 20 if you want to average that out. But because it's casino, people don't want to hear it. I'd imagine that the turnover is higher. I'd imagine that the profit is much lower as a percentage, just given that there's higher RTP rates on casino than there are on horse racing. Then you can argue that you can maybe spend more often than you can watch a horse race, but I'm not even sure that's true in retail anymore. What I think will probably happen, tax carve out for retail or no tax carve out for retail, is you'll see more shops not showing horse racing, is my guess, unless there is some dramatic change. But I might be wrong. I think that's just the inevitability of the trajectory that we're on, I think. And I think that's probably bad for levy, because as we mentioned last week, 38% or something of levy comes from retail. It's probably bad for the Racing Post, who've probably tried to migrate into betting shop displays from the newspaper and things like that and sign deals up there. They're not going to be worth as much when less shops are showing horse racing, which is what I think will happen. Might be wrong. Hopefully I'm wrong. But yeah, I think, and that's just the UK. Obviously, Ireland doesn't have FOB tees in Ireland.
Yeah. A question from Stuart Ackister. What can Cheltenham do about low sun, if anything? They just never really seem to address it as a major issue. I think we're all in agreement here that there's not very much they can do about low sun, especially at tracks like Cheltenham. I don't think you can just tell the jockeys to go and jump these hurdles. And guess what? The microscope coming down more on fallers and stuff at tracks like Cheltenham is just probably not going to fly. So it's just one of those things, Tony, you'd say.
No, you can't do anything. Someone mentioned something about there's an episode of The Simpsons when they did something that blocked the sun out, but I don't know.
They put up a huge like dish to try and block the sun out. So maybe that's the answer. We could get
Is that in the film? Is that a film?
It might have been, yeah.
There's a good, probably ties in slightly to gambling in that, where the end of the world is coming or something, and that Simpsons film always stays in my head, even though I haven't seen it since I was a kid. And it's all the people in the church run to the pub, and all the people in the pub run to the church, and it's they all pass each other in the street when the end of the world is coming. It's pretty funny.
We need Hugh back to give us the exact episode numbers and to quote it verbatim. Yeah.
From Paul McGuire, can you confirm where punters can see the official SP during a race these days? There have been some strange returns in relation to favourites in recent times compared to Betfair SP. Where are the SPs shown, say, during a 3-mile chase? Cheers, Tony.
I asked Nick Rust about this. I think he's the SPRC chairman, is he, or CEO?
He is, yeah.
And I'll read out exactly what he said. They are immediately issued a few seconds after the off via PA. The Post, for example, will receive them then. The racing channels and ITV also receive them, and the specialist channels usually put up a crawler with the SPs when races are in the run. However, it's not consistent. We are asking them to become more consistent with it, but cannot force them. Instead, I think we will now publish these on our own website, but this will need some development at the Press Association. So there's your answer.
I think that is correct. I've seen the role in SPs when they're shown on racing channels. I also think that probably the same with bookmakers, as we discussed earlier on. People just have a distrust of it. If favourite wins, people probably think they're returning that a tick short than what they would have done if it didn't win or something like that. But as Nick says, they're published straight away essentially, and it's just getting people to carry them essentially seems to be the issue.
So thanks for Nick.
Very good. Second last question from Paul Newton. Rather than criticise Oisin Murphy's riding, can anyone on the panel beat Jason Weaver's dancing on the head of a pin spectacle on ITV, saying it's the reason the Japanese will never win the Arc? even Rishi cynically said, "Good effort at defending it, Jason." I didn't see this. Tony, did you?
Yeah, I saw
know
this.
what's happening here?
I thought it was a really good discussion between Rishi, Tom Scudamore, and Mick Fitzgerald about dangerous, stroke careless potential riding in the round. Obviously, they picked up on Sheen Murphy's ride at Sandown as a possible example, although he didn't even get a ban for that. So they were discussing that, and it cut to Jason Weaver at Doncaster, and it was a bit excruciating, as the questioner kind of like said. But yeah, it was a really good discussion. I think ITV Racing actually posted a 5-minute clip about that section. So I'm increasingly impressed by Tom Scudamore. Actually, he comes across really well, and he's not afraid to voice an opinion, which a lot of the ex-jockeys in the media, Ruby Walsh aside, don't tend to do. But yeah, a good piece, and yeah, I kind of agree with the questioner.
Good. And Tony, you can take the last question from David Starm there. Is Paul Nicholls finished? Quite a leading one.
No, he that was sent before Hitman won the Old Rowan Chase yesterday. Anybody who knows Paul Nicholls suggests he'll keep on coming out swinging. He's up against it for sure. But just an aside to Hitman winning the Old Rowan, the owners gave all the winnings from that winning ride, to charity, to Ricky Hatton's charity. I'm not sure if the horse was called Hitman after him, but it was good of the owners to actually like say all the winnings from that goes to Ricky Hatton's charity. So a nice touch to finish with.
Nice gesture indeed, yeah. So that'll do it, gents, for another episode of the Racing Room. Thanks for all the questions just done there, and thanks for everyone for listening. All's left to say, if you're having a bet this week, do check out the AK Bets Big Prices tabs for all your stale,
but not you, Ian.
But thanks to you. Sorry, lost train of thought there. Thanks again for listening. Thanks to the lads for their contributions and for all your questions and much more. We'll be back this time next week. Cheers.